Following a developing story now, it's life in prison with no parole for the Richfield man convicted of killing a former classmate. A judge sentenced Daniel Bartelt late this afternoon for the murder of 19-year-old Jessie Blodgett.
On July 15, 2013, the quiet town of Hartford, Wisconsin, woke up in horror. In a house on the outskirts of town, where music and laughter always filled the air, police discovered the body of 19-year-old Jessie Blodgett, a talented actress, singer, and college student. Her mother found her daughter dead in her bedroom in the morning, just a few hours after Jessie had returned home from a party celebrating the end of the theater season. There were no signs of a break-in, no screams, no struggle. Only a strange, heavy silence in the room where yesterday there had been lines from the play and laughter. There were signs of strangulation on her body. Her face wore a frozen calm, as if she had simply fallen asleep. For Hartford, a town where crime was limited to petty theft and traffic violations, it was a shock comparable to an earthquake. Everyone knew Jessie. She performed on school stages, taught piano to younger children, and participated in charity concerts. She was called a ray of light, not because it sounded nice, but because it really did feel warmer around her. The night before, on July 14th, she had participated in a performance by the local theater company. After the performance, her friends threw a small party. Jessie laughed, took pictures, and sang. Nothing foreshadowed the tragedy. Around 1 a.m., she returned home, wished her parents good night, and went up to her room. It was the last night of her life. When her mother went to wake her up in the morning, the room was strangely quiet. Her phone was on the bedside table. The curtains were drawn. Jessie wasn't moving. The first few minutes seemed unreal, like a dream, in which the brain refuses to accept the obvious. But soon reality broke through. A call to 911, screams, tears, commotion. Neighbors ran out into the street when they saw the police cars and ambulances. Journalists who arrived at the scene described the atmosphere as suffocating silence. Police officers stood outside the house with their heads bowed. No one could understand who could have harmed a girl who had no enemies, no conflicts, no debts. While investigators examined the house, neighbors gathered in the yard. Some brought flowers, others stood silently, pressing their palms to their faces. Jessie's mother sat on the steps, unable to utter a word. Her father tried to talk to the police, but every word came with difficulty. The town, where rarely anything happened, suddenly became the center of a tragedy. The newspapers would call this day the end of Hartford's innocence. People locked their doors and, for the first time in many years, became afraid of the streets at night. But fear was gradually replaced by the question, who could have done this and why? Jessie did not lead a double life and had no secrets. Her friends and family were certain that she could not have hurt anyone, and yet someone broke into her home and robbed her of her future. The last day of Jessie Blodgett's life was filled with light, the same light she carried with her wherever she went. On July 14, 2013, she woke up early, as usual. She had a busy day ahead of her. The final performance of the local theater, meetings with friends, conversations about the future. It was a warm summer day, and there was a feeling of anticipation in the air. No one, not even she herself, knew that this day would be her last. Jessie always started her morning with music. She spent hours at the piano rehearsing her favorite tunes, and then she went to the theater. That day, the city's art center was hosting a performance in which she played one of the leading roles. Rehearsal began at noon. Her friends recalled that she laughed, joked, and sang along the whole time. She seemed to be glowing. No one noticed any anxiety or fatigue. On the contrary, Jessie looked especially lively and inspired, as if she had a premonition of a new phase in her life. After the performance, the actors and volunteers threw a small party. They gathered at the home of one of their friends, laughing, reminiscing about funny moments from rehearsals, and sharing plans. Jessie said that in a few weeks, she was going to college to study music, and that she dreamed of one day staging her own musical. Her eyes lit up when she talked about the future. Towards midnight, her friends began to leave. One of them offered to drive Jessie home. She declined, saying that it wasn't far and she wanted to walk a little. Around 1 a.m., she entered her parents' house. A night light was on in the kitchen. Her mother woke up to the soft knock on the door, heard her daughter climbing the stairs, and wished her good night. That was their last conversation. Jessie's room was her little world. On the walls were posters of theater productions, photos with friends, quotes from plays and songs. On the table lay scripts, sheet music, and a notebook with plans for the summer. She turned on some soft music and went to bed. The house was quiet. Her parents heard no noise, no cries.
Also at 6, a guilty verdict in the trial of Daniel Bartelt. He killed Jessie Blodgett in her home in Hartford.
In the morning, her mother went into the room to wake her daughter. At first, she thought Jessie was just sleeping soundly, but the room was too quiet. The phone was on the nightstand, the alarm clock hadn't gone off, and the bed seemed unnaturally flat. After a few seconds, her mother realized that something was wrong. When she touched her daughter's hand, it was cold. The scream that shook the house was the first sound of that morning. The police arrived quickly. At first, the officers thought it was an accident, perhaps suffocation in her sleep or a medical episode. But soon, an expert noticed marks on her neck. The picture became clear. Jessie had been strangled. There were no signs of forced entry, and the door to the house was locked from the inside. This meant that the killer either knew how to get inside or Jessie herself had opened the door for him. That day, the Blodgett home became the epicenter of the investigation. Forensic experts photographed every corner, took fingerprints, and collected DNA samples. On the carpet, near the bed, they found a faint shoe print, a rare size, male. On Jessie's wrists were marks from a rope, as if she had been held, but without a struggle. Perhaps she did not immediately understand what was happening. Her parents couldn't believe that the killer was somewhere nearby, in the same house where they slept behind the wall. Her mother later admits that she will hear that sound for the rest of her life, the morning silence in which her heart tells her that something irreparable has happened. The news would call this day the darkest in Hartford's history. For the residents, it was a shock. A town where everyone knew each other, where doors were not locked at night, had suddenly become a crime scene. People left flowers at the family's home, lit candles, and brought photos of Jessie. The police promised that the killer would be found, but no one could have imagined how close he was, literally within arm's reach. Although Jessie's body was found on the morning of July 15th, the first few hours after that were perceived by her parents as if she had disappeared, not physically, but from their familiar world, from the entire logic of their lives. Everything that had been normal yesterday suddenly ceased to exist. The house, where music had reigned, was now filled with people in uniform, cameras, photojournalists, and questions that no one could answer. Investigators started with the obvious. There was no break-in, no signs of a struggle, so the killer could have been someone Jessie trusted. The room looked tidy, with everything in its place. Only on the sheet was there a faint trace of blood, and on her neck were characteristic marks indicating strangulation with a soft object. The weapon was never found, but forensic experts suggested it could have been a rope or tape. The police interviewed everyone who had seen Jessie on her last day. Her friends told them about the party. It had been fun, with no incidents. She left around midnight, didn't complain to anyone, and didn't seem upset. One of her acquaintances, a 20-year-old guy named Daniel, admitted that he had walked her home that evening but had not gone inside. His words seemed unimportant at the time, but they would later become crucial. While investigators were gathering information, the city literally froze. Hartford residents couldn't believe that the killer was still somewhere nearby. Doors were locked, people whispered. Parents didn't let their children go out alone. It was a small town where everyone knew everyone else, and that's why the unknown was so frightening. From that moment on, the investigation ceased to be just a murder case. It became a hunt for a serial killer. The police compared the data and realized that the attack on the surviving woman had taken place just 5 miles from the Blodgett family home. Over the course of several days, investigators checked all of Jessie's acquaintances. They paid special attention to those who might have known that she was coming home late. Friends, colleagues, former classmates, everyone was called in for questioning. Among them was that very guy, Daniel Bartlett. Neighbors had seen him come to Jessie's house before, help her with projects, and sometimes visit in the evenings. Her parents knew him as polite, a little strange, but quiet. At first, suspicion did not fall on him. He came in for questioning calmly and said that he had been walking in the park that morning. But when investigators checked the park, they found a rope and duct tape with his fingerprints in the grass. Later, drafts of letters and notes were found on his computer in which he discussed control, power, and the enjoyment of fear. Meanwhile, the autopsy results confirmed that Jessie's death occurred between 1 and 3 a.m. This meant that the perpetrator struck shortly after she returned home. He knew that her parents were asleep and that the house was unguarded. Everything happened quietly and quickly, professionally, or at least with a coolness rarely seen in beginners. When this information became known, the city was in shock. The news reported, "There is a killer among us." People called the police, passing on any information they had, from strange faces to cars seen on the street at night. But everything pointed to one name. A few days after Jessie Blodgett's funeral, the police announced that a suspect had been arrested. It was Daniel Bartlett, her acquaintance, theater partner, and someone she trusted. For her parents, it was an indescribable blow. Jessie's mother would later say, "We knew him, we invited him to our home, we fed him at our table, and he sat there and smiled." The discovery of the body was not the end of the tragedy. It was the beginning of a new pain, when the killer was given a face.
And one more note about the murder weapon. The ME testified that she definitely thinks police found it when they uncovered various ropes in a cereal box left in a trash can at a Hartford park.
After Daniel Bartelt's arrest, the investigation of Jessie Blodgett's case became a matter of honor for the Hartford police. For a small town, this was not just a criminal. This was a man whom everyone knew, with whom they studied, laughed, and went to the same theater. The very fact that the killer grew up alongside the victim shattered the notion of where the line between us and them lies. Investigators started with the details, and each new discovery brought them closer to the truth. Bartelt's house was searched. In the attic, they found a laptop, flash drives, and a stack of notes, including texts and drafts that resembled a confession. In them, he described the feeling of power that fear gives, and the moment when a person ceases to be an individual and becomes a form. Psychologists would later say that these were not just fantasies, but the diary of a man preparing himself step by step for a crime. In addition to the notes, they found a rope, duct tape, and plastic ties, the very same ones whose traces were found on Jessie's body. One of them had traces of blood that matched the victim's DNA. Experts later confirmed that the rope was identical to the one found in the park where Bartelt allegedly walked on the morning of the murder. When Bartelt was brought in for questioning, he was calm, even friendly. Investigators recalled that he spoke quietly, smiled, and offered to tell everything he remembered if they brought him water. At first, he denied any involvement. He said that Jessie was his friend and inspiration, and that he would never have harmed her. But when he was shown photos from the crime scene, his expression changed. He fell silent. He sat motionless for about 5 minutes, then said, "You already know, don't you?" That was the beginning of his confession. He said he had come to Jessie's house at night, supposedly to talk. He said he wanted to make up, that there had been tension between them for a long time. When she refused to let him in, he went around the house and entered through the unlocked back door. The investigation then reconstructed everything based on his words and street evidence. He went up to her room, they argued, and then there was a flash of violence. He grabbed a rope that was lying on her chair and began to strangle her. The psychiatrists involved in the trial noted that Bartelt spoke about it without emotion, as if describing a scene from a movie. He showed neither remorse nor awareness, only interest, as if he were preoccupied with what exactly would give him away. Further questioning only intensified the horror. Investigators discovered that a few days earlier, he had attacked another woman in the park, the one who survived. At first, Bartelt denied any connection, but his fingerprints and shoe prints were found at the scene of the attack. The motive was the same. Jessie's murder was a continuation of his experiments, as psychiatrists would later call it. When all the evidence was gathered, the district attorney's office charged him with first-degree murder, kidnapping, and assault. Psychological evaluations confirmed that he was sane, fully aware of his actions, carefully planned, and tried to cover his tracks. The trial began in the summer of 2014. The city was once again gripped by anxiety. Jessie's friends, teachers, and neighbors sat in the courtroom. In the dock was a thin, silent boy with glasses who had once sung on stage with Jessie. His mother cried. His father remained silent, staring at the floor. When photos from Jessie's room were shown in court, the room wept. The girl's mother took the stand and said in a trembling voice, "My daughter believed that good always triumphs over evil. I'm no longer sure of that. But I want her story to help others not to trust those who wear the mask of friendship." It was the most poignant moment of the trial. Even the judge paused before continuing the hearing. In August 2014, the court found Daniel Bartelt guilty on all counts. The sentence was life imprisonment without the right to parole. This was no relief to Jessie's family. They said that justice was not a victory, but simply the absence of further evil. But the city breathed a sigh of relief. The evil that lived nearby finally had a name and was behind bars. The name Daniel Bartelt will long be associated with cold horror in Hartford. He was not just a murderer, he was one of their own, someone they had known since childhood. And that is what made everything that happened so painful. Daniel grew up in the same city where Jessie was born. They went to the same school, participated in the same plays, and went to the same parties. He played the guitar, wrote songs, and dreamed of becoming a director. On the outside, he was a quiet, shy guy, harmless, even a little awkward. But behind this mask was a person with something dark and dangerous inside. Teachers remembered him as smart but detached. He didn't get into conflicts, but he avoided contact, as if he lived in his own world. His notes, found later, revealed this world. A world where a person is not an individual, but an object. In one of his texts, he wrote, "When you control another's breathing, you become a god." These words would later lead psychologists to conclude that the crime was not a sudden outburst, but the realization of a long-held fantasy. As a teenager, Bartelt often felt rejected. He was withdrawn, had difficulty with girls, and complained to his friends that no one sees the real him. After school, he enrolled in college but quickly dropped out, saying that studying is pointless. He spent more and more time at home, on the computer, watching violent movies and reading forums where people discussed murder and control over others. When Jessie became actively involved in theater, he reappeared. He helped with rehearsals, brought equipment, and offered ideas for scenes. Her parents were wary of him, but Jessie herself considered him just a friend. She was too kind to see danger where someone needed support. Psychologists who examined Bartelt after his arrest described him as a person with pronounced narcissism and sadistic traits. He needed a sense of power and control, but was unable to build real relationships. Love, friendship, affection. All of this was a role-playing game for him. He could portray emotions, but did not feel them. Fragments of his diary were preserved in the case files. Shakord Chiaz's quote Riwo. Investigators noted that he had carefully prepared for the crime. Several weeks before the murder, he thought through the scenario and chose a time when Jessie's parents would be asleep. He did not come to the house by accident. He knew that she did not lock the door. Everything was planned. His motive turned out to be both simple and terrifying. The desire to feel power over someone who symbolized everything he didn't have. Light, talent, love. Jessie was the person he wanted to be but couldn't. She was free, alive, surrounded by people. He was lonely and insignificant. By destroying her, he was trying to destroy this reminder of his own weakness. The prosecutor said in court, he didn't kill out of hatred, he killed out of emptiness, and that's the scariest thing, because emptiness knows no bounds. The contrast between him and Jessie became the symbol of this story. She was life, light, music, and faith in goodness. He was darkness, silence, and envy that took the form of violence. When the judge read out the sentence, there was a heavy silence in the courtroom. Jessie's parents did not look at him. They knew that before them was not a monster or a madman, but simply a man who had lost his humanity. And perhaps that was the most frightening thing of all. Psychologists commenting on the case said that such crimes are rarely committed suddenly. It is not a flash of anger, but the result of a long internal decay, when a person ceases to distinguish between life and its imitation. After the trial, Jessie's mother said, "He didn't kill her dream. He just showed how much evil fears the light." The verdict in the Jessie Blodgett case was handed down in 2014. Daniel Bartlett was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. The trial lasted only a few weeks, but for Jessie's family, they were the longest weeks of their lives. Every day they came to the courtroom, sat in the front row, and listened as prosecutors and witnesses pieced together the night they had tried to forget forever. Bartelt remained calm throughout. He did not try to justify himself or ask for forgiveness. He sat with his head slightly bowed, as if watching someone else's story unfold. When the judge read out the sentence, he did not flinch. He did not say a word. Only when Jessie's mother addressed him directly did he look up for a moment. She said, "You took our daughter from us, but you did not win, because everything you did only brought more light." These words were later quoted by journalists, psychologists, and priests. They became a symbol that even in darkness, there's room for human dignity. After the trial, the Blodgett family did not shut themselves away in grief. They decided that Jessie's memory should live on, not as a tragedy, but as a movement that inspires others. This is how the Jessie Blodgett Foundation came into being, dedicated to combating violence and supporting young artists. Its mission is simple: to help those who want to create and to remind people that art is the opposite of violence. Every July, a concert in memory of Jessie is held in Hartford. Her favorite songs are played on stage by the children she once taught music to. People come with their families, bring flowers, and light candles. And amid the quiet sounds of the violin or piano, one phrase written on a banner above the stage is always heard: "Keep singing, even when the world falls silent." After the verdict, Wisconsin authorities reviewed their procedures for responding to assaults. Now, reports of attempted strangulation are treated as potentially dangerous, with immediate response and data sharing between counties. The memory of Jessie was the basis for these changes. Her name became not just a symbol of grief, but a step toward preventing new tragedies. Jessie's friends say she was a person who believed in the power of good, even when everything was falling apart. In her old diary, they found an entry made a few days before her death. Every day is an opportunity to be a light for someone, even if that someone is yourself. This phrase became the foundation's motto and is now printed on the wall of the theater where she once performed. The story of Jessie Blodgett is not just a chronicle of a crime. It is a story about faith and goodness, about the fragility of trust, and about how love is stronger than fear. It shows that even when one person brings darkness, hundreds of others can respond with light. "We can't bring Jessie back," her father said, "but we can make sure she continues to change the world, even if it's from a different place." So the tragedy of one family became a reminder to thousands. Evil can touch anyone, but the choice of how to respond to it is ours.